You promised me we were going to get married this time, so I would never have to leave India again.
But do you know the situation or not?
It's always because of your parents every time. I'm not going to keep coming back and leaving every damn 6 months. I'm not going to keep doing it. You're not going to keep doing it. You're going to marry me. That's it.
Last night, California police were called to one of the quietest neighborhoods in Palm Springs. But this wasn't a break-in or a car crash. It was a scene straight out of a psychological thriller. A woman with a knife pressed to her own throat, screaming Sumit Singh's name, standing outside Jenny Slatton's front door. Her words cut through the night. "He wants me dead. Jenny stole my husband." Neighbors ran outside. Someone hit record. Red and blue lights painted the walls of Jenny's house, the same house fans thought symbolized her happy ending. This is Sabrina, and you're watching TLC Drama Live. If you follow the show, hit subscribe right now, because what I'm about to tell you may change the way you look at 90 Day Fiancé forever. And please comment below, because tonight, everyone has questions. According to eyewitnesses, the woman on Jenny's lawn wasn't a random intruder. She was Ariya Sharma, Sumit's first wife. The same Ariya who, for years, we were told had died in India. The same woman whose death certificate was shown on national television, the document that made Jenny and Sumit's wedding possible. But Ariya is alive, and her reappearance wasn't quiet or staged. It was chaos in real time. Paramedics, police, a street full of screaming, and blood on the concrete. Authorities say she's now stable and under psychiatric evaluation, but the story she told before collapsing has shaken everyone. She claims her death was faked. She says Sumit forged her death certificate to escape the marriage, move to America, and start over with Jenny. Fans who once saw their love story as proof that love conquers all are now watching it twist into something unrecognizable. Was this entire saga built on a lie? Did TLC film a wedding based on a forged document? Or is Ariya spinning her own story for revenge? Police are reviewing footage, neighbors' testimonies, and a small bag Ariya dropped before she was taken away. Inside were her passport, recent travel stamps, and letters she said would expose everything. The same reality show that gave us fairy tales is now giving us a criminal mystery, and nobody knows which version of the truth will survive. If Ariya is alive, what does that make Sumit? When Sumit first told Jenny that his wife had died, the world stopped judging him. Viewers who once called him a liar suddenly saw a broken man trying to rebuild his life. His tears on camera looked real. His grief became the turning point that won fans back and softened Jenny's critics. TLC built entire story arcs around that moment. The man freed from tragedy, the woman finally finding her forever love. It was sold as a story of rebirth. Every episode that followed carried that shadow. The funeral that no one saw. The family that stayed silent. The documents that were shown once, briefly, and never questioned again. For years, it became the emotional glue that held their relationship together. Jenny forgave the betrayal of his secret marriage because she believed that marriage no longer existed. Audiences believed it too. We mourned with her, we rooted for him, and we bought the story. That's what makes this so devastating. If Ariya's claim is true, then every tear we watched, every promise he made, every word of love he whispered was built on a performance. The death that made the love story possible may have been fiction. The show we trusted to be messy, but honest could now be hiding something criminal. Jenny once said on camera, "We went through hell and came out stronger." Millions of fans shared that line across social media, calling it the purest kind of love. But what if the hell she thought she survived wasn't the worst part? What if it was only the beginning? Reality TV has always blurred the line between truth and storyline, but this feels different. It's not a plot twist. It's betrayal in plain sight. Fans are going back to old clips, freeze-framing moments, and asking how nobody saw the cracks before. How did TLC's cameras capture everything, but miss a death that may not have happened? Now the same house where they once filmed cooking scenes and wedding confessions is taped off with police barriers. Officers are analyzing the footage from the night Ariya appeared. The woman once written off as a tragedy has returned as a living witness. And somewhere in that same house, Jenny is staring at the spot where Ariya nearly ended her life, wondering if everything she believed about her husband was a lie. The night Ariya showed up was quiet until the screams started. Neighbors later said they thought it was an argument at first, maybe a couple fighting on the street, but the voice didn't stop. It kept getting louder, more desperate, repeating the same name, Sumit. She was reportedly holding a kitchen knife, shaking, crying, her hands covered in blood from what looked like a cut on her palm. According to witnesses, she stood right in front of Jenny's house, the same front door seen so many times on TV. The porch light was on, the curtains half open, and someone inside froze as Ariya shouted that Sumit wanted her dead. She allegedly screamed that Jenny had stolen her husband, that she was tired of hiding, that no one believed her. It was chaos. People stepped out with phones recording. One neighbor said it felt like they were watching a live episode, except this time it wasn't entertainment. Police arrived fast. Red and blue lights flashed across the white walls. Officers took positions, trying to calm her down. Reports say they spoke gently, asking her to drop the knife. Ariya cried, shaking her head, saying she had proof in her bag. She wanted Sumit exposed, not arrested, exposed. Then she collapsed on the grass, sobbing, as officers approached and pulled the knife away. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital, while Jenny reportedly watched from inside, pale and shaking. There's empathy here too. Whatever Ariya has been through, it's clear she's in deep emotional pain. Mental health crises aren't new to this franchise. We've seen cast members break under the pressure of fame, money, and public judgment. But this incident crosses a line no one expected. It's not a breakup, not a scandal, not gossip. It's a physical, bloody reminder of something that should have stayed private, but now plays out under the harshest spotlight. When the sirens faded, police collected the evidence. They took Ariya's bag, her passport, and the documents she claimed proved everything. That moment on Jenny's lawn is now the center of a police report, a dozen witness statements, and what could become a criminal case. Fans used to joke that 90 Day Fiancé was scripted. Now people are asking if this was the script no one was supposed to see. Was this a cry for help, or proof of something far darker? The morning after the incident, police began sorting through Ariya's belongings. Inside her small black bag were the documents she mentioned during her breakdown. At first glance, they looked ordinary, papers folded and sealed in plastic. But one of them immediately stood out. A death certificate. The same one shown years ago on TLC, declaring Ariya Sharma deceased in India. Only this time, investigators compared it with official samples from the same region, and the differences were hard to ignore. The government seal was misplaced, the registration code mismatched, and the signature belonged to a medical officer who, according to records, wasn't even working in that district in 2020. If this document was indeed a forgery, it meant that the foundation of Jenny and Sumit's marriage rested on a falsehood. The next discovery made the situation worse. Ariya's passport, valid, current, with her photograph and a recent entry stamp into the United States. That single piece of identification destroyed years of belief. The woman fans were told had died had legally entered America weeks ago. Her existence was no longer a rumor, it was fact. Then came the affidavit from her brother, Rahul Sharma. In it, he swore that Ariya had been alive and hiding in Jaipur for 4 years, terrified of her husband. He claimed their family cooperated with the death story after receiving threats and payments. According to him, Ariya's escape to America was organized by relatives who feared she would be silenced for good. It's a shocking statement, but without verification, it remains an allegation. Still, it's now part of an official file in a California police department. Reporters began tracing the financial angle next. Screenshots surfaced showing alleged bank transfers from an account under Jenny's name to one linked to Ariya's initials. Each transfer was around $4,200. The description field read, "Family support Sumit." If genuine, it could mean that Jenny's savings were quietly funding someone she believed no longer existed. But digital evidence can be manipulated. Even experts say a screenshot is not proof until the accounts are subpoenaed. What complicates the story is how perfectly these receipts fit Ariya's narrative. Every line of her statement, every accusation, seems to have a matching document. Yet the symmetry itself feels suspicious. Could someone be feeding this case with carefully curated evidence? Could Ariya have help from someone who wants Sumit destroyed? The investigation now straddles a fine line between truth and orchestration. Either way, the impact is devastating. The illusion of innocence has been shattered. If those transfers are true, Jenny may have been funding her husband's secret life. Every story like this has a motive, and in this one, money and image sit right at the center. Sumit's public life painted him as a man trapped between love and culture, torn between family duty and a foreign relationship that seemed impossible to sustain. That version of him was soft-spoken, polite, humble, a man fans could root for, but the allegations now suggest something far colder. Freedom was always Sumit's obsession. From his first episode, he talked about wanting to live life on his own terms. In India, that meant escaping an arranged marriage he claimed he never wanted. In America, it meant escaping financial limits. Jenny's retirement savings and her American citizenship gave him a new start, a new identity, and the image of a devoted husband who had survived tragedy. If Ariya's accusations hold any truth, that tragedy may have been manufactured to make that freedom possible. Jenny believed she was saving a man who had lost everything. Instead, she might have been bankrolling his second life. Her move to India, the apartment, the travel costs, even the eventual relocation to the US, all of it was supported by her income. TLC cameras framed it as sacrifice for love. But in hindsight, those same sacrifices could look like transactions in a long con. It's not just financial manipulation, it's emotional imprisonment. Jenny's kindness became currency, her empathy a shield that allowed Sumit to keep both women dependent on him in different ways. Ariya, by her account, lived in fear and silence. Jenny, in contrast, lived in devotion and ignorance. One woman allegedly trapped by fear, the other by faith in love. That parallel makes this story more disturbing than any simple fraud case. It's about how emotional vulnerability can become a tool, how affection and trust, when exploited, can ruin lives quietly until someone bleeds on a front lawn. Sumit's defenders say this is absurd, that he's the real victim of a fabricated revenge plot. They point out that Ariya's timing seems calculated. She resurfaced right as filming for a new season began. But others argue that trauma doesn't follow schedules. Maybe Ariya's breaking point finally arrived. Maybe she saw Sumit's smiling face on American television and couldn't take it anymore. At the hospital that night, Ariya reportedly asked for a nurse's phone. With trembling hands, she recorded a short message in Hindi, one she said the world needed to hear. That video may be the key to everything. In the hospital hours after her breakdown, Ariya was awake, shaking, and surrounded by doctors. A nurse later said she kept asking if the cameras were still outside, terrified that no one would believe her without proof. That's when she borrowed a phone and hit record. Her voice in Hindi was low and broken, but every word felt heavy. Translated, she said, "He takes money from Jenny every month and sends it to me so I stay silent. But now he's tired of paying. He wants me gone forever so he can live free with her money in peace. Please, someone save me. I don't want to die for real this time." The clip went viral within hours. It spread across fan groups, subreddits, and gossip channels before authorities even confirmed her name. Some called it the confession of a victim, others said it sounded rehearsed. Still, her pain felt raw, her breathing unsteady, her eyes filled with the kind of fear that doesn't look staged. In that moment, she wasn't a character or a headline. She was a woman who believed her life was at risk. Police confirmed that the recording was genuine, though they didn't verify the claims in it. The words ignited a wave of outrage online. How could Jenny's money, the funds that built the so-called love story, end up in another woman's account? How long had this been happening, and why hadn't anyone noticed? You think you've heard the worst. The next revelation changes everything. When Jenny was informed about Ariya's survival, witnesses said she went silent. No tears, no denial, just shock. For years, she defended Sumit against everyone who called him a liar or a user. She stood by him through every accusation, every insult, every fight with his family. And now, that same trust was being dismantled piece by a woman she thought no longer existed. Jenny's friends say she replayed Ariya's hospital clip again and again, unable to look away from the face on the screen. That night, she called the police herself, demanding to know if what she'd seen was real. She asked whether Ariya was truly alive, whether her husband's past had followed her home, whether the life she built in love was actually funded by deception. The answer she got changed everything. Jenny's world fell apart in one phone call. The officer on the line confirmed it in calm, professional words. Ariya Sharma was alive, hospitalized, and cooperating with authorities. Jenny said nothing at first, then asked if this was a mistake, if someone was playing a cruel prank. The officer paused, said no, there was no mistake. A case had been opened, and her husband's name was part of it. She hung up, sat at her kitchen table, and stared at her phone. Everything in the house felt foreign, the wedding photos on the shelf, the framed Mr. and Mrs. signed by the door, the blanket Sumit had given her on camera the night they finally married. Every object now looked like evidence. She dialed Sumit, no answer. Texted him, no reply. She called again, voice shaking, and finally got through. Sumit sounded groggy, confused, insisting he didn't know what was happening. Jenny told him the police had confirmed Ariya was alive. He went silent for 10 long seconds before saying, "That's impossible." Then the line cut. That silence told her more than any confession could. Within the hour, Jenny drove herself to the nearest police station and gave a formal statement. She handed over everything she had: phone records, emails, bank receipts. anything that could prove what she knew and when she knew it. Officers told her that given the nature of the allegations, they were coordinating with federal authorities. That's when the FBI's name first entered the conversation. By the next morning, a preliminary inquiry had reportedly been logged under the number FB 20,257,841. The classification read, Suspected document forgery, immigration fraud, and potential conspiracy to defraud. Investigators were verifying whether Sumit's U.S. spousal visa application included a forged death certificate. If so, that would mean not just personal deception but a federal crime. Jenny sat in the waiting area while officers spoke in low voices nearby, trying to process the possibility that her marriage might not only be over but illegal. Sumit vanished from the public eye immediately. His phone went off. His social media account stopped updating. Fans noticed first, flooding comment sections with questions. Some assumed it was a PR break, but soon after, TLC quietly removed upcoming promotional posts featuring the couple. What had been the network's most stable love story was now a potential scandal that could bring regulatory scrutiny. Behind the scenes, production reportedly froze everything. Crew members were told to stay silent. Footage from recent filming was pulled from editing bays. Lawyers began reviewing contracts, checking clauses that covered criminal misrepresentation. The team that once followed Jenny and Sumit's every move was now instructed not to contact either of them directly. Multiple insiders claimed the network's executives held an emergency call the same day the FBI number circulated internally. The question on everyone's mind was whether the show had unknowingly filmed an ongoing fraud. Jenny's emotional collapse was captured by no camera, but friends described it as the hardest moment of her life. For years, she defended her relationship against every accusation that it was fake. She said love didn't need approval. Now she sat alone in a rented house in California, surrounded by evidence that her entire relationship might have been a storyline constructed out of lies and paperwork. She didn't cry immediately. She said later that she felt nothing at first, no sadness, no rage, just a hollow kind of disbelief. Then she started shaking. Her call to the FBI wasn't a publicity move, it was desperation. She told them she was scared that her husband might disappear, that she didn't know who to trust. Agents assured her they would handle the matter discreetly. They asked if Sumit had access to her accounts or documents. Jenny said yes. They advised her to change passwords and limit communication. It was the kind of conversation she never imagined having in her 60s, after believing she had finally found peace. Fans who once mocked her for being naive now flooded online threads with sympathy. But sympathy doesn't erase humiliation. Jenny's private pain was again public property. Every old clip was being reanalyzed by strangers looking for hints, contradictions, or signs of guilt. The same smiles and confessions that made her beloved were now being used as evidence in digital courtrooms of fan opinion. Meanwhile, TLC's silence grew heavier. Their lawyers reportedly advised against any statement until official confirmation from law enforcement. Advertisers started pulling placements from upcoming episodes. A network source said meetings were dominated by one question: what happens if a cast member becomes the subject of an FBI probe for fraud and possible involvement in a staged death? The risk wasn't only legal, it was reputational. TLC had built its empire on real love. Now one of its flagship couples stood accused of turning that brand into a crime scene. Inside the fandom, theories multiplied. Some said the whole thing was a smear campaign from Ariya's side, meant to ruin Sumit's image. Others believed the documents were too detailed to fake. A few even argued that TLC must have known something and looked away to protect ratings. Every angle pointed to one disturbing truth: nobody could tell where reality ended and production began. Through all this, Jenny stayed mostly silent. She didn't post or appear in interviews. But a neighbor told a reporter she saw her sitting on the porch late at night, staring at the streetlights. That porch had once been the set of a romantic confession. Now it was the site of a police incident and a federal file. The dream she thought she'd won had turned into a bureaucratic nightmare. At TLC headquarters, panic met denial. Some executives wanted to pull all content featuring the couple immediately. Others argued for waiting until the investigation confirmed anything. Editors were told to prepare 2 different cuts of upcoming episodes, one with Jenny and Sumit, one without. Insiders whispered that several producers had already scrubbed their names from the credits. The entire operation moved like a company preparing for damage control rather than storytelling. What started as one woman's emotional collapse was now spiraling into a legal storm, crossing 2 countries and multiple agencies. Whether Sumit is guilty or framed, the chain reaction he set off has changed everything. For Jenny, for the franchise, and for the millions who once believed in their love story. Can TLC keep airing a love story that might be a crime? When a story explodes like this, everyone rushes to pick a side. Some people see Ariya as the clear victim, the woman erased on paper and brought back only when she bled on someone else's doorstep. Others see Sumit as the target of a detailed smear campaign. And stuck in the middle is Jenny, who looks more like collateral damage than a villain. If we slow down and look at each person, the lines are not as simple as social media wants them to be. Start with Ariya. Her hospital message, her affidavit, the documents in her bag, all of that paints a picture of a woman under long-term pressure. Her story is full of fear, control, and silence. In many conservative families, divorce is shameful, and a failed marriage can follow a woman for life. Saying she was dead might have been easier for some relatives than admitting the relationship broke apart. So part of her pain might come from cultural expectations, not only from one man. Still, she is the one who traveled across the world and melted down in front of cameras and police. That takes a level of desperation most people never reach. It also takes planning, and that is where doubt creeps in. If Ariya arranged travel, gathered documents, and timed her appearance while filming was underway, critics argue she knew how to create maximum impact. They point to how quickly clips spread online and how neatly her claims fit the receipts she shared. That level of preparation makes some viewers wonder if this is trauma speaking or strategy. Trauma and strategy can exist together. Someone in pain can still plan their moves. That is what makes this case so hard to read. Sumit sits on the opposite side of the story in many people's minds, but even his role is layered. On television, he showed himself as a man torn between tradition and love, fighting against a system he did not choose. He cried, he hesitated, he lied, and then he tried to fix it. Now he is recast as a possible architect of fraud. Did he fake a death to free himself from an unwanted arranged marriage? Or did he go along with a family decision and then lose control of it? If the death certificate is forged, someone ordered that forgery. That someone benefits from Ariya being gone. In many Indian families, parents hold immense power over their children's marriages. It is not hard to picture older relatives pushing for a clean solution. No scandal, no divorce, only a quiet tragedy that lets everyone move on. Under that pressure, younger family members fold. That does not excuse anyone, but it adds context. There is a difference between a cold mastermind and a weak person who let others steer. Neither looks good, but they are not the same thing. Jenny's position is heartbreaking in another way. She traded stability for love, moved abroad, faced online mockery, and defended her partner through every lie that came out on air. She believed she had all the facts. If the bank transfers and forged documents are real, she was not a co-pilot in the scheme. She was the fuel. Her savings, her trust, her reputation, all feeding a relationship she thought was pure. Some fans blame her for ignoring red flags. Others see her as the easiest person to fool and the one who will pay the highest emotional price in the end. Ask yourself one thing here, before you pick a side: whose pain looks real to you and whose story feels rehearsed. Cultural shame is a silent character in this mess. For Ariya's side, shame around divorce, failed marriage, and public scandal can push a family into extreme solutions, even lies about death. For Sumit's side, shame around age gaps, foreign partners, and public judgment can drive someone to hide things from both family and audience. For Jenny, shame appears later, when she realizes the internet is pulling apart every past decision she made, frame by frame, calling her blind, foolish, or complicit. There is also fear. Ariya says she lived in fear of violence and exposure. Sumit likely fears prison, deportation, and the complete loss of his public image. Jenny fears being remembered not as a woman who fought for love, but as the woman who helped keep another woman in the dark by accident. Culture shapes how that fear looks, but fear itself is universal. Each person is trying to survive something, whether that is danger, humiliation, or legal fallout. We have to be honest about the gray area here. It is possible Ariya is telling the truth and still leaving out ugly details about her own behavior. It is possible Sumit crossed every line and still grew up in a system that encouraged lies over honesty. It is possible Jenny ignored warning signs because the alternative was losing the only relationship she had poured her life into. When stories go this deep, nobody comes out spotless. Fans want a clear hero and a clear villain. Real life rarely gives that. If Ariya is lying, she is weaponizing real trauma and real cultural pressures to destroy a man and a brand. If she is telling the truth, then a global TV franchise highlighted a carefully staged love story while a real woman hid in another country, funded by the same money that filmed the wedding. Both versions are disturbing, neither lets the audience stay comfortable. Streaming platforms, clips, and gossip pages push us to pick a narrative fast, but this situation punishes fast judgments. Every new document, every new leak, pulls sympathy in a different direction. One moment you feel for Ariya, the next you replay Sumit's old scenes, wondering if his fear of his parents was more twisted than we knew. Then you circle back to Jenny, sitting alone in that house, and you feel anger on her behalf again. That emotional whiplash is part of why people cannot stop watching. One thing is clear. No matter who is lying, no matter who is hiding what, the story has moved beyond television and fandom. Legal systems are involved, reputations are at stake, and the show that made millions off their love now finds itself under the same microscope it once turned on them. The truth is not only messy, it is dangerous. The fallout hit harder than anyone expected. Overnight, the story jumped from fan gossip to mainstream headlines. Words like visa fraud and criminal conspiracy replaced age gap love and cultural clash. The couple once used as TLC's feel-good redemption arc was now treated as a legal case study. For years, Jenny and Sumit symbolized persistence, the kind of stubborn love that outlasted judgment. Now their faces represented something else entirely, the cost of believing everything on reality television. Federal investigators were said to be combing through Sumit's immigration paperwork, checking every date and signature linked to his K-1 and spousal visa filings. If the death certificate attached to those documents proved forged, he could face charges of immigration fraud, false representation, and conspiracy. In simple terms, that means prison time and deportation. But the damage wasn't only legal. For a man who built his identity on being misunderstood but honest, this scandal was public dissection. Every old clip of him crying now played like evidence, not emotion. Viewers who once defended him began rewatching those scenes and asking if they were watching an actor rather than a partner. For Jenny, the fallout was equally brutal. The sympathy that first flooded in quickly turned into judgment. Some accused her of looking away for too long, of refusing to see the obvious. Others defended her as a victim who had already lost too much. Either way, her privacy was gone again. She was being investigated, dissected, and reinterpreted by strangers with timelines and theories. Every old interview, every Instagram caption about love conquering all, now felt like a cruel joke. Her home had become a police scene, her marriage a federal question, and her heartache public content for the same audience that once cheered her wedding. The public's betrayal was loud because it was personal. Viewers felt used. They cried with this couple, defended them online, argued about them at dinner tables. They thought they were watching something real, and now they felt conned. TLC built its empire on intimacy, on promising that what we saw was unscripted, authentic human connection. When those promises crack, people don't shrug, they revolt. Fans began demanding statements from the network, some called for boycotts. Others started tracking TLC sponsors, tagging advertisers under posts with words like fraud and cover-up. The network, for its part, went silent. No tweets, no press releases, no on-camera statements from producers. Silence became its own confession. Industry insiders said executives were terrified of lawsuits and government attention. If a cast member under a U.S. spousal visa obtained that status using falsified documents, and if the show continued paying or filming them, the network could face questions about negligence. Lawyers warned against acknowledging anything until the facts were confirmed. But the absence of answers only fed speculation. Silence turned into fuel. In that vacuum, something deeper began to stir, a reckoning with the ethics of the genre itself. Reality TV has always blurred the line between human emotion and entertainment, but this case stripped that blur bare. When you build content on people's lives, what happens when those lives collapse? Viewers started realizing how pain becomes profit in this industry. Every argument, every breakdown, every reconciliation is edited for engagement. Every cry for help becomes a meme before it becomes a memory. The franchise thrives on the illusion that everything is raw, but rawness has always been curated, monetized, and framed. Jenny's story was perfect for television because it was improbable. An older American woman finding love in India despite cultural odds. That narrative sold hope, vulnerability, and defiance. But when that same storyline starts echoing with fraud and potential crime, it reveals the price of turning private trauma into public entertainment. The audience feels cheated not only because of lies, but because they realize they participated in the performance. Some fans now ask whether TLC has a moral responsibility toward its cast. Should the network vet stories more carefully? Should it intervene when things cross from dramatic to dangerous? Others argue that the audience wanted this. The higher the stakes, the more people watch. Every season pushed boundaries, and eventually, one boundary had to break. Behind closed doors, producers are rumored to be reviewing contracts to ensure future liability clauses protect the company from exactly this kind of disaster. Some crew members reportedly feel sick, saying they knew something felt off but were told to keep filming. One anonymous insider said, "You can't make a show about people's lives and act shocked when those lives explode." There is a kind of collective guilt running through the fandom now. Viewers wonder if their hunger for constant conflict created the very pressure that made someone like Sumit lie or someone like Ariya snap. Reality television only works when someone bleeds, emotionally, sometimes even physically. The more people watch, the more those moments are rewarded. Still, beyond all the analysis, there are three people left shattered. Ariya, who may have risked everything to be believed. Sumit, who may have built freedom on deception. Jenny, who may have discovered that love isn't always enough to survive the truth. Around them stand millions of witnesses, each trying to decide how much of what they saw was real. This story began as a romance that promised honesty. It became a mirror showing what happens when fame, money, and love tangle into one forged narrative. Whether this ends in arrests, forgiveness, or silence, something irreversible has already happened. The illusion of authenticity, the thing that kept millions watching every Sunday, has cracked. And through that crack, we can see what was always there underneath. Pain packaged as content, grief turned into plot, trust treated as a prop. Three lives are now intertwined with one forged document, and the rest of us are left holding the receipts of our own curiosity. The story that once felt like a fairy tale has now become a courtroom riddle, and no one knows where it will end. The official investigation is still unfolding. No formal charges yet, no final verdict, only silence filled with questions. Reporters wait outside hospitals and embassies. Fans scroll for updates every morning, half hoping to see new evidence, half afraid it will confirm everything. The people at the center of it all have vanished from view. Jenny is back in California under quiet police protection. Sumit's whereabouts are unclear. Ariya remains in medical care, speaking to investigators through lawyers. What began as a show about love now reads like a warning. It's a reminder that behind every smiling couple's montage lies a production team, a contract, and 1,000 hidden pressures. The truth here is slippery. Maybe Sumit was trapped in a cultural web so tight that he chose deceit over dishonor. Maybe Ariya's fear warped into obsession. Maybe Jenny's faith blinded her to warning signs. Or maybe all three were victims of a system that rewards secrets more than honesty. There's a reason this story feels heavier than the usual reality TV scandal. Because it forces everyone watching to confront the line between empathy and exploitation. Jenny's heartbreak is the quietest part of this chaos. She hasn't given interviews, but those close to her say she spends her days replaying old clips in disbelief, trying to separate truth from performance. Every word that once felt romantic now sounds rehearsed. Every fight now feels like foreshadowing. She told one friend that it's like waking up in someone else's life, a life edited by strangers and sold as entertainment. Jenny's silence has become its own statement, not denial, not defense, but exhaustion. Ariya's trauma is still unfolding. Her actions that night at Jenny's door might have been a cry for justice or a breaking point years in the making. She is under medical observation, speaking only through short written notes. In them, she says she is not after fame or revenge, she only wants people to know she exists. For a woman who was declared dead on paper, existence itself has become resistance. The system that failed to protect her is now the same system deciding whether to believe her. And then there's Sumit, once the face of quiet charm and cross-cultural romance. His image now hangs in uncertainty. If his documents prove false, he could lose his freedom. If they prove real, he still loses something greater, credibility. No matter what the outcome, the perception of honesty that built his career is gone. He may not end up in court, but he will live inside public judgment forever. As the weeks pass, TLC remains locked behind closed doors. Rumors say new legal teams are auditing every season ever aired, checking for similar inconsistencies. It's not only about this couple anymore, it's about trust. The network that thrived on selling authenticity is now being forced to answer what authenticity even means. When cameras turn real lives into stories, who owns the truth, the people living it or the people filming it? This saga feels like a fracture in the entire idea of reality television. The genre promised connection, real emotion, and relatable love. But when production schedules, visa filings, and personal trauma collide, reality starts to look like fiction with better lighting. The audience wanted to see humanity. What they got was a maze of lies wrapped in the illusion of intimacy. And yet, we keep watching. Maybe that says more about us than it does about them. What lingers now is a strange kind of silence. Not the calm kind, but the one that comes after a storm when you realize nothing will ever go back to normal. Ariya's blood still stains a California sidewalk. Jenny's trust still lies shattered in that house. Sumit's name still echoes through federal offices. Three people who once told the world they beat the odds now face a future ruled by those same odds. There are still missing pieces, still voices unheard, still truths buried under contracts and edits. Maybe the next update will clear everything. Maybe it will only raise more questions. But what if this wasn't the only forged love story on TLC? Because another couple's secret might be even darker.